Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our year-end closing webinar. We like to do this every year to give everyone a refresher on how year-end closing works in Microsoft Dynamics GP. If you have attended these in past years, there isn't a significant lot of changes, but again, it's always good to refresh it. And we are recording the meeting and we'll put it up on our YouTube channel, and Amy will be sending out the link. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat button, but we will stop a couple times and open up the sound and ask for questions. But right now I do have you all muted. All right, so use the chat if you're having a technical problem. But otherwise, we're going to get started. So first off, who am I? I am Devin Southall. I've been with SSG over 10 years. I think we're moving on 13 years or something. I have a background in accounting and small business. And if perchance something goes really, really badly with your year-end close, typically I'm the one who helps fix it. So we always like to prevent that from happening. Unfortunately, we have at least one every year with something really bad happens with it. So follow the steps and you won't be in that situation. All right, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how to create a new fiscal year. You do it so infrequently, and the screen, I got to be honest, is not exactly intuitive, so it's always good to refresh that. Then we're going to talk about the module year-end closes. So there are year-end closes in all of the modules, and I actually have them in different sizes because some are more and less important. We're going to talk about what the module closes do, when you might want to do them, and why you might want to do them. And then we're going to talk about the biggie, the financial year-end close, the one that matters the most. We're also going to talk about Payables 1099 printing, because at this point, pretty much most customers do have to do 1099s, at least a couple of them. And so that's a big concern at year-end. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about. So talk about if your fiscal year is not calendar, because not everyone has a fiscal year that's the same. It's not January 1 to December 31st. In that scenario, you're going to need to do two different close processes. For your calendar year, you're going to want to close the sales, the purchasing, and the payroll module. And then for your fiscal year, wherever that falls, you're going to do all the other closes. So the steps are basically the same. And then for inventory and tax, you decide whether you want to do that on a calendar cycle or a fiscal cycle. It doesn't really matter. You just have to be consistent. Okay, so that's if your fiscal year is not exactly the same as January 1 to December 31st. For the rest of this presentation, I'm going to assume you're on a calendar year. So if you're not, just sort of translate based on this slide. And again, if you need the slides, just ping Amy and she'll send it out to you. At the end. All right, so first off, we're going to get into GP, and I'm going to go through a demo on how to create a new fiscal year. The steps are sitting here, but we're going to go through them. The trickiest part is that you actually have to type in the drop-down field, which seems sort of weird. So let me go through that. All right. And slideshow. Sorry, the skin doesn't work on this computer. Here I am in Microsoft Dynamics GP. This is actually 2016, but the steps are the same in any one. You're going to either want to go to Microsoft Dynamics GP, Tools, Setup, Company, Fiscal Period, or if you're going the other way, it is Administration, Setup, Company, Fiscal Period. I'm going to pull up this screen, and you can see that I have years already through 2018 created. So for this demo, I'm going to create 2019 for you. So I click in this drop-down and actually type 2019. This is the part that seems confusing. When I tab out, it actually fills in the first day and the last day. So what it has done is it has based this on the last year that's been created, and it's filling in, oh, I think you want to start on January 1st, 2019, and my last day is December 31st, 2019. If this is correct, we are good. If this is not correct, you're going to have to go back and look. Make sure that you are creating a year that doesn't already exist, okay? The next step here is to hit calculate. When you hit calculate, it actually takes these 12 periods and spreads it out. Hopefully these dates are correct. If your dates aren't exactly like this, you're going to want to change them. And then you're going to want to change the names if you want this to say something other than period 1, period 2, period 3. So again, the names you see here is what you're going to see say on your financial screen here. So period 1, period 2, period 3. Okay. Any questions on that? I'm unmuting you. Does anyone have any questions on creating the fiscal year?
No.
We could generally do that anytime, could we not?
You can. You can. And some people go and do a whole bunch all ahead. It's really up to you guys, but you're going to need to do it before January 1st or you're going to have problems. All right. No more questions? Beautiful. I'm going to keep moving on. All right, so that was our demo from current slide. All right, moving on. So can you do transactions in 2018 if you have not closed your year? Yes, you can. Before you close, you can do transactions in 2018. Notice I've got a little exception here. Our exceptions are payroll and fixed assets. Payroll and fixed assets are a little more particular, and we're going to talk about that as we move these slides if you're using those modules, okay? Will history be deleted during your closes? The answer is no, as long as you have your maintain history checkboxes selected. Typically these are selected, but if you're at all uncertain, you should go check them. They are set up in the module for general ledger, bank reconciliation, and payroll. And on those setup screens, you'll see these checkboxes like this. You'll want to make sure they're checked. And for each card on our vendor, our customer, our item, and our tax detail, we have checkboxes like this. So again, if you have any uncertainty whatsoever of who's been setting up things, how people have been set, go and check. It's always better to check than to have a problem. Oh, come on, next. Before doing any year-end close or routine, you always want to get all users out of GP and all related programs. So any program that's going to write to the GP database, make changes in GP such as sales pads, such as vicinity, any such as a Sellos, you're going to want to get people out of those. Back up your database. If you're going to archive these backups or save them, you're going to want to back up the Dynamics database too. Now, a lot of people say IT is notorious for saying, oh, there's backups running. Really, these should be a special point in time backup, and we often recommend saving them, okay? And we'll talk about why a little later. You're going to run your closer routine. Just as a note, if you have access, the routines always run faster on the server, significantly faster. And only let users back in if your process is successful. If your process wasn't successful and it's not a time where you can instantly call for help and keep people out, you're going to want to roll that backup back in and then talk about it, redo it in a test company, okay? Really important, and this really goes for all the major routines, okay? All right, housekeeping. During your close process, since you've got the users out of the system, it's a great time to do some of the GP routines that move to history. There are places in the system where things do not automatically move themselves to history. There's a step for that. Two big ones is in receivables. There's I always call this badly named. It's called paid transaction removal, but this is actually what moves it to history. Okay, and so it's a great time to do it at year end. We always say to do it back a couple days. So you're not going to do for transactions that were just paid, but you know, often you want to do this annually, quarterly, something like that. Also, if you have purchase orders, there is a routine called, again, badly named, remove completed purchase orders. This also just moves it to history as long as we have those history checkboxes selected. So again, can't say it again. If you have data issues, these will crash, so that's where the backup comes in place. We also have scripts to check for that, so if you have concerns, if you've had data issues, call us first. We can run the scripts and check for you. There is a routine called period consolidation, which is in financial. We do not recommend this. Reason we don't recommend this is because it actually makes out-of-balance journal entries, and then if you do get an out-of-balance journal entry, it makes it significantly harder to find which journal entry is actually out of balance. I'm going to turn off the mute for a second. Anyone have any questions on this section? I'm taking that as a no. Beautiful. All right, so housekeeping. Should I run the GP utilities for check links or reconciles? Okay, so this is where we're going to differ a little from Microsoft's recommendations. Microsoft recommends, if you have inventory, that you run check links and reconciles. We do not recommend those routinely if they have a data issue. So Microsoft actually used to recommend this routinely all the time, and they've backed away from that. So really, we only recommend running check links and reconciles if you have a data issue, and we also recommend to run it in a test company first. And to check your data very carefully after running these utilities. We've had many customers come to us with, I ran this utility and nicely put, it made it worse. It didn't fix it in the way I wanted it to fix it, or there's something else that happened. It can change your financial data and it can permanently remove records. From an accounting perspective, this kind of scares me. So we always just recommend that people do not do these for fun. Do them only if there's a particular issue and you're in contact with either your IT department or ourselves about fixing a particular problem, okay? So just don't do it for fun at your end. All right, we're going to dig into the module closes now. We're going to particularly talk about AR, receivables, AP, payables, and tax. What do these particular three closes do? Not a heck of a lot. They reset various year-to-date fields to 0 and move the numbers that are currently held in those year-to-date fields to the prior year-to-date fields. So you're going to see these fields on smart lists and a couple inquiry screens, such as the customer summary inquiry and a couple summary reports. The system's going to work fine if you never run these closes. We routinely go into customers and they ask about things and we go and look and like, oh yeah, you've never run your receivables year-end close. If you want to, you're going to want to do this as close to that year-end point as possible. And so if you do have all your sales done on December 31st and posted, that's a fabulous time to run the year-end close on the receivables module. Payables, you're just going to have to pick a time and do it. It's going to be close enough. We do, if you really want these numbers to be more perfect because people are using them, we do have scripts to fix those for you, basically recalculate them from the actual transactions. And so that's a possibility if it's important to you, or if the reports really need to be perfect, you're better off not using it off these year-to-date summary numbers, okay? So what about your 1099s? Your payables 1099s are independent of any of the GP closes. You can run your 1099s before, after, whenever, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the presentation, okay? So let's talk about the inventory module close. It also resets various year-to-date fields to 0 and moves the year-to-date numbers in the prior year-to-date fields. Again, you're going to want to do this between December 31st and January 2nd-ish. But I do want to point out that there are check boxes on this screen: discontinued items, sold lot attributes, and sold receipts. These will remove data. So if you're not having space constraints, you're not having data slowness issues, you don't want to check these boxes. Permanently remove it, no record, not there. So just, really, data's cheap. Leave the boxes unchecked. All right, so before we get into the payroll year-end closing, does anyone have any questions on the module closes?
No. You said we can get the slides for these, right?
Yep.
Okay.
No problem.
I just want to, because I know when we go to do it, we'll have, what did she say?
Exactly. No problem.
You'll be sending a link to us at the end of this, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Let me pop into GP while we're at it. And so let's just talk through all the module closes are located under routines. And so here I'm in sales, I'm under routines, it's year-end close.
Oh, yeah.
And they're pretty straightforward. They just have a process button. Again, make sure everyone's out, make a backup, run the close. If it all goes through, then let people back in. Okay. So, yep, those are the module closes. Any other questions on that before we get into payroll and some of the other modules and then into financial?
And that doesn't get done until you're completely done with the 2000, because hours can go out a month, right? So we're good.
That's what you have to decide, because it's taking those year-to-date numbers and dumping it over into the next. You have to decide when's the best time to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but luckily most people don't use those numbers. So we're talking about if I go to my summary card here and I pull up amount since close, these numbers here, it's going to take what's here and dump it in, or what's here year to date and dump it in here. If you pull up this screen and say calendar year, now it's going to get real data. Okay. Yeah. So there's no perfect time. All right. Any other questions before we move into the other modules? All right. All right, so payroll year-end closing. I'm going to go through this briefly. I'm going to sort of speed through this because if you have done payroll before, it's just a brief refresher. If you haven't done payroll before, you're probably wanting to call us up and have us hold your hand through the process if you're going to do anything fancy. But the payroll year-end closing creates your year-end file used for your printing your W-2s and your W-3s or your other reports. This process can be repeated if needed for corrections, and you always want to make a backup before running the close. And there is some very specific Microsoft Dynamics knowledge base articles that we want you to follow for this module. We just sort of give you the overview. It's all about your tax tables. When you do the year-end close, you want to make sure you have a 2017 tax table in place. If you're doing payroll for 2018, you want to make sure you have a payroll 2018 tax table in place. There are tax rate changes, so that's pretty important. Your flow chart for payroll, you either are going to use the top part or you're going to use the bottom part. Top part depends on whether you can get your W-2 figures all wrapped up before you move on to 2018 payroll. And in that case, you just do your last payroll, you do your closing, you check your reports, you install your tax tables, and you run payroll. If you're not going to get these tied out and perfect and you still have to pay people, like, oh, you have a payroll on the 2nd, you're going to have to do it a little more convoluted. So you're going to run your payroll with your tables in place, then you're going to put the tax tables back in time. You're going to do your closing, you're going to check your reports, and then reinstall the 2018 tax table to do payroll. Luckily, you don't have to do this loop very often, but that is what it's all about. All right. Next, we're going to talk about fixed assets. So fixed asset is another module that's a little particular for the year-end close, and there are very specific KB articles for Microsoft for this that we do recommend you follow carefully. Fixed asset allows you to only be in 1 year at a time. So you run your year-end close for one or more books, but you can't move on with any of your books until you've closed all of your books if you have more than one. So you must finish all your transactions, your additions, your retirements, your depreciations for the year before you close. You can't run depreciation for the next year until you have closed, and all assets should be depreciated to the last day of the year. If you follow any of the Microsoft blogs, they said this particular line about all assets should be depreciated to the last day of the year about 4 times. They said it's that important. And most of your reports cannot be run after closing. In the last update for fixed assets, which was in the R2 for 2013, they did add a couple reports that can be run after closing, but those are the only ones. So really, if you need a lot of reports, and there's a huge list of reports in this KB article that they recommend that you do. So pretty important, okay? Next one we want to talk about is analytical accounting. So this is a new slide for this year. It is included in the financial close, but there are some very particular steps that they want you to do for analytical accounting before you close. So it does have its own KB article, even though it doesn't have its own close. And this year, depending on what version you are, there is, if you're on 2016, there's a hot fix that they want you to be on before you close. For those 3 modules, payroll, fixed assets, and analytical accounting, you are going to want to get the Microsoft KB or a Knowledgebase article and read it carefully and follow it carefully. We do not recommend that for the other modules, just for these particular ones, okay? All right, so I'm going to... Anyone have any questions on those before we go into the financial close?
No.
Anyone?
No.
Beautiful. All right. Let's talk financial year-end close. What does the financial year-end close do? It creates your beginning balance for your balance sheet accounts and your retained earnings. It deletes unused inactive accounts. And it is a hard close on the prior year. So if you're closing 2017, it makes it so that you can no longer put entries into 2016. So you want to make sure those numbers are right, and you put those last little final entries that the auditors gave you that you said, oh, yeah, I'll put those in later. Can you still make entries to the year after close? So once you run the year-end close, can you make entries to 2017? Yes, you can, and even in the subledger. So if it comes up that there was a payables entry that needs to be put into payables and you don't want to accrue it, or a receivables entry, you can do that. And even if the subledgers are closed, as long as you allow the posting to history checkbox in your general ledger setup, which by default we typically leave on. And so this is general ledger setup. That's our posting to history. So one note, if you're looking at the posting journals on these, it's going to look kind of like it's double. And we often have questions and people will call slightly in a panic, my entry's doubling. What you're actually seeing, and it's even harder to see if the date of your entry is the last day of the year, so December 31st typically. The entry is twice, once for the entry as you made it, and the second one is on December 31st, and it's actually posting to your beginning balances period, or your BFF entry to adjust your beginning balance. So don't panic. Apparently I turned off the slideshow. All right. When do you do your financial year-end closing? Any time is possible, but your best time is after your subledgers are complete for the year. So after you're done with your payables and your receivables, and that's all solid, and after the bulk of your year-end entries are made. Also, it needs to be before you need to run financial statements into the new year, because you're not going to have those beginning balances. You're not going to have your financial statements run cleanly for the new year unless you sort of stand on your head. Most people close somewhere around mid-February. And so just to clear what I mean by these beginning balances, if I come in here to financial and I come to my summary, and I look, say, at my cash account, and I look at, So you can see my 2016 here has transactions and it has an ending balance. But if I go to my 2017, it doesn't have a beginning balance. That's because in this company, I haven't even closed 2016, so it hasn't brought those beginning balances in. So though I'm seeing numbers here, they're not exactly correct because it doesn't have that beginning balance entry that it should, since this is a balance sheet account. So that's pretty important. So keep in mind, you're going to see that in your queries, but you're going to even see that on your reports if you haven't run your close. Okay. All right, so let's talk about our important close steps. And we're going to go through a couple of these, particularly this one, check our accounting posting types. I'm going to do a demo in a few moments. So check our accounting posting types. Our posting type is what tells it whether it should or shouldn't create a balance forward. And so you want those correct. And I'll show you how to fix that in a second. You want to make sure that all your transactions are posted. If there's any journal entries created anywhere in the system, it's going to give you a warning as part of the close, but it's really best to just get those suckers posted. You're going to want to get everyone out of GP. You're going to need to verify that there's sufficient free hard drive space on the GP server. This is the #1 cause of year-end failures that we get. Microsoft recommends that the database needs to double itself, and so it has to have, if the database is 2 gigs, you're going to need 4 gigs of free hard drive space on the GP server. If you got any questions, our support team can help you check that out, or can help your IT department check that out. But that's, again, a huge concern and becomes a problem. Make backups and archive them. And this is of your company database, your Dynamics, your MR reports. Why do we want to make backups and archive them? And by archive, I mean save them, store them somewhere, say this is our year-end backup, keep them. It becomes this point in time that we can refer back to, and we've got, from a support standpoint, we've got customers every year that something happens, someone deletes history, something fails, and if we have a point-in-time backup, we can use that to restore it. So really, it's sort of like making a backup of files and sending it off somewhere just in case. Great to have it. Yes, you have your point-in-time recovery, but if you miss something and it happened 3 months ago, you might have lost that, and that's what the archive backup is about. Do not end task on your close, even if it says not responding. The newer versions of Windows loves to say not responding, and it's still churning away behind the scenes. So do not end task on your close. You're going to crash it if you do that, and you're going to have to roll back your backup. So don't do it. Check the close before letting people back into GP to do your work. And Microsoft actually recommends taking another backup at this point and archiving it. We've never really needed that, but hey, if you want to make more, have at it. If there are any issues, restore the backup and try again, maybe in a test company. You are not supposed to use the reverse historical year to fix a failed close. It's not going to help you. It's going to make it worse, okay? All right, so before we go into the posting type smart lists,
Hello?
anyone got any questions?
Oh, no. Okay.
All right, I'm taking that as a no. I'm going to move on to our post. All right, so let's go through how to check your posting type. You want to go into Microsoft Dynamics GP. You want to go into Smart Lists. I have my little Smart List icon up here, but you can also go Microsoft Dynamics GP Smart List. I am going to go into Financial. I am going to go here to Accounts. I've already actually made a favorite, but let me show you what I've made it. So I'm going to click this one on here. So what I have done is I've gone up to my search criteria and said, give me my main account segment that's greater than, my cutoff is 3,000, so 4,001 is my income and above, so that should be my balance sheet accounts. And most of the time you don't have to add this account type is equal to posting account. Fabricam, we typically recommend that non-financial accounts like allocation and unit accounts should have letters in them. Fabricam doesn't work that way. So most of the time for you guys, posting type and main account is all you need. And what you're going to see here when I hit OK is I get a list of accounts. Like, see, this one's a sales account, but it's still set to be a balance sheet account, and I've got some expense accounts set to balance sheet accounts. So what's going to happen if I close my year right now is these guys are going to have beginning balances carried forward, which is inappropriate. So all you need to do, since this smart list has a go-to directly to the GL account, is you just need to double click on it and change your posting type to P&L and hit save. And then when I do my year-end close, this will not have a balance brought forward. So to reverse it, we're going to go up to our search and sort of reverse your criteria. So now I'm going to go less than, and I'm going to put 4,000. And I'm going to say my posting type is equal to balance sheet. So the reverse, I want to see anything that's less than 4,000 but set to a profit and loss account. And luckily on that one, I don't have anything. I always like to check that I haven't messed something up. So if it was me, I would reverse this and say equal to balance sheet and make sure that I've got the rest and be like, oh yeah, that's right, that's good. Obviously, you could just run your accounts straight through and just sort them and eyeball them or sort them and check. But the criteria that we showed you on the smart list is helpful if you've got lots and lots and lots of accounts. And you might miss one because just missing one is one. All right, so that's our posting a type smart list. Next, we're going to get into the year-end closing screen. Anyone have any questions before we go on?
No.
No questions? Beautiful. Right. So the year-end closing screen. It has a progress bar now, so that's great. And it has a checkbox to maintain your inactive accounts. And so you can maintain inactive accounts with budgets or all inactive accounts. Don't delete anything whatsoever. So again, these are going to delete accounts that do not have history. And so if you've brought in inactive accounts maybe at a go live or something and you want to clear them out, sometimes that's helpful, but sometimes it's not. Your retained earnings account should come through. If it's not, there's a setup issue. If you're closing to divisional segments, the segment, it'll have to be created for all the effects, and that's one of the checks before it goes into it. And most people do not reset your starting journal entry. You can just leave that and let it keep rolling forward. It can get pretty darn large, so don't stress about that. So that's our year-end closing screen. Don't press close year twice. You'd think I wouldn't have to say this, but I do. There is lots of times that we've had customers press the close year twice, and you close this year and next. In some instances, it goes pretty fast. So let me just pull it up in mine. So I'm in Microsoft Dynamics GP. I've hit Financial down here. I go down to Routines, and here it is. It's year-end closing. And there's my screen. There's my account. And then I just hit Close Year, and flip, it goes through. All right. Next up, check your close. What do you want to check? Is there any errors during processing? Obviously. But is your retained earnings entry correct? Does your trial balance total to 0? Microsoft actually recommends running your financial reports before and after and double check that they are the same. That seems a little bit much, but hey, go for it if you want to. And now you can go and close your fiscal periods. If there are any issues whatsoever, go restore your backup. That's your safest choice. And then, you can call us later for help and say, hey, we tried to close the year. It had a problem. We restored it. We can always put that into a test company and rerun it, figure out what the problem is, resolve the problem, and then go try it again in the live company. That's always a great bet. All right, so we're ready to move on 1099. Any questions whatsoever on what we've covered up to now?
Nope.
Anyone else?
No.
See? It's simple, isn't it? All right. Let's talk 1099s. 1099s are under routines. It's print 1099s. There are two icons on here, depending on what version. Hopefully it says print forms and print. So the print icon without the piece of paper behind it is an edit list. So it shows you what 1099s it's planning on printing. Okay. You can also have a smart list built for you. Pretty much most everyone is now on a version that has something called Smart List Designer. In that case, we can create a couple different smart lists if you're interested in one of what vendors are flagged as 1099s, one of the 1099 balances that they're printing, all sorts of cool stuff. Your year, your type, your other icons on here. So there's a whole bunch of 1099 changes depending on what version you're on. Most people are on GP 2013 and above. 2013 and above, we have utilities where you can update vendor all of the transactions. Before that, there was just a summary screen, 1099 details, which you could go and change. And so GP 2013 and above adds our utility and it adds the detailed. It also prints the 1096, so there is a point with that, which we'll talk about, and adds a special address ID. The primary versions just use the primary address. All right, so when you go to print your 1099s, you're going to want to purchase forms from an office supply company. There is special forms. I think there might even be special toner on them. You can't just print off 1099s, okay? Office Max has them, Office Depot. You can get them anywhere. You can get them from Staples. You want to check your alignment. When you go to print it, it knows that it's a pre-printed form, so you get this extra tab on the print icon, and you can scoot your alignment around. I needed to slide mine over by 1/4 of an inch horizontal to get it to line up. So print them. If you want to sacrifice a form, print directly on the form. If you don't, print it on paper, hold it up to the window, make sure it's aligning. There are no 1099 changes for this year. Yay! But last year had a 1096 form change. There was a box added, so all the boxes slid around. So if you haven't done a GP update, the GP update for the boxes came out in December of last year. So if you haven't done an update since then, your 1096 will not align correctly. So you're going to sort of have to print it out and fill it out by hand. You won't be able to reprint it. Or you can contact us and we can get you on a version that's got the box lined up correctly. So let's talk about the update 1099 information, which most of you at this point have. It's GP 2013 and above. You don't want to update the vendor card if you need to change someone midstream if you've already done transactions. You want to go under utilities, and it's going to replace the totals and reassign. So here is what you're changing it from and to. Generally, you want to do this for just a vendor, obviously. Whether you want to update the vendor, the 1099 transactions, or both, most of the time you're going to do both. So one point on that, let me go back to the previous slide. I tried this for fun in my test company and just ran it wide out, and it literally changed every vendor and every transaction ever in history. So be very careful in this screen. Make sure you put a vendor ID in. Make sure you put a date range in, okay? You only probably want to change like the current year's values, but this is where you properly want to change it. You also can go to the Edit 1099 Transactions, which is under Purchasing Transactions. And here you can go and pull up and see every voucher that's hit the 1099 tables and what it's categorized and what its amount is. And so you can change this. If you need to change the box for certain transactions or the dollar figures, you can change it right here. And so this is where you can pick and choose from the utility. In GP 2013 and above, you do not want to edit details, which is what you did in the past. Okay. And again, if you've got specific questions before GP 2013, call support. We can help you out. All right. All right. Let me back up one more. So we are getting to the... Is there any questions on 1099s?
No.
Got some no's. Got any yeses? All right, knowledge-based links. So Microsoft puts together these very involved, very detailed knowledge-based articles, sort of at a partner level, but they are for a customer level also. We don't typically recommend all the instructions that are in the module closes. We only recommend them for the payroll, the fixed assets, and the analytical accounting. But if you want to see what Microsoft's recommending, these are links that anyone can get to. They're they're not under a firewall at this point. There's no passwords. You can go get to them. So we will send out this in the PowerPoint. So any other questions before we get to our final couple slides? Beautiful. So remember, we're here to help you. We have support from Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m. If you want someone to hold your hand through your close or you're concerned about it, we would be glad to schedule that with you. We can verify your drive space, make your archival backups with your IT staff, or if we've got access, we can walk you through the steps. We could close it on the server with you if you'd like, if that's faster, or we can assist with troubleshooting. So feel free to contact support if you do want to schedule that. Most of the time it's during business hours. We do have certain customers who ask us and we arrange to do night and weekend. Obviously that's limited, and there's a special rate for that because it's no fun. But you know, some companies, that's what we need to do. All right, thank you for attending. If you've got any other questions,